Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and there's a really common analogy that people use out there about training and weightlifting and building your body up, that it is like building bricks in a wall or a house that you build up, and every workout that you do is a new brick in the wall, and it's about getting to that finished product, that house. And that it really isn't a good analogy, but it's kind of going in the right direction. And when I'm done with this and you guys understand how this model really works, this is going to be really helpful for all of you out there when you're writing your own programs and you're setting goals to really understand the way that the human body adapts. And I'm going to give you guys a simple analogy, and it's going to help you guys a lot. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, the problem we have with this idea that it's just a continual building of a wall or a house and you're trying to get to a finished product is that the human body is never going to be a finished product. All right? The human body doesn't actually maintain your previous training stimulus either. They actually detrain. Every single workout session that you have ever done in the gym is going to detrain. All right? And when you accept that reality, it helps you understand how to structure training. Every muscle cell and fiber that you build is going to die. And it's not going to die when you die. They're going to die next year. They're going to die a few months from now. Every single cell in your muscles that you have built up over the years, they are different cells than you had years ago. All right? Every cell in your body dies and gets replaced for the most part over time with new cells. So everything that you built actually has died several times in the course of your training careers. All that muscle you built has actually died and been replaced. All of your training sessions have detrained. And the human body is in a state of continual flux. Sorry about that little bang there, guys. It's in a state of continual flux and change. We are dynamic organisms. Our muscles are actually shrinking and growing every second of every day. Like every muscle cell in your body is losing size and gaining size concurrently at the same time. It's just that when over time the growth exceeds the shrinking, it gets bigger. You're a continually changing dynamic organism. Nothing is constant in the human body. It's all in a state of flux. And a better way to look at training, and this will make sense of why we periodize training a certain way, and I'm going to put it in the real world in a minute. The best way to look at it is that you're building bricks in a wall, right? You are building bricks in a wall. And as you add bricks, that wall gets taller. But the bricks on the bottom are being crushed by the bricks above them. And the further the bricks are down, meaning the further back that you put them in, meaning the further the workouts go back, the more they are being crushed and compressed and turning into dust all along the ground. So the wall is continually compressing itself back down, and the oldest bricks are being pulverized as it goes, and the highest bricks up are maintaining their size better. And if you stop adding bricks, of course the weight of the bricks on top will continue to slowly grind down the stuff under it until all your training adaptations have faded away and you're back where you started, or maybe slightly better. Most people, if they quit training, keep some of the muscle. They lose most of it, right? Keep a little bit. There's always something left. There's that residual muscle memory. That's some of the last few bricks you did won't have any on top of them to compress. But the more bricks you add, the faster it breaks down. In other words, the longer you train, the slower the gains come. But you're doing just as much work, sometimes more work. You're adding bigger bricks. So in theory, you should always be making faster and faster perpetual gains, but over time they slow down. And that's because the weight of the bricks on top are crushing the bricks further down with more and more weight. In other words, the more size you gain, the more strength you gain, the more adaptations you make, the slower the wall grows over time because it's getting taller and taller. In other words, once your biceps are 16 inches, it's a lot harder to get them to 17 than it was to go from 15 to 16. It's even harder to go to 18 inches when they were already 17. It gets harder and takes longer. And it's because it's that rate of decay is going faster. The adaptations aren't giving you as much to the total anymore. And when you understand that from that perspective, that the body is in continual flux, and the way that works in the real world, your old training sessions detrain, they don't matter. All that your body cares about right now It's how tall the wall is and what bricks are near the top. It doesn't care about the old bricks. They matter less and less to the point of non-existence later down the road. That's why people have developed different types of periodization and why they work. Meaning, if I were to take someone and get them from point A to point B using different types of linear periodization, whereas then maybe I have them do a bunch of high rep stuff to build a base, or I have them do a bunch of speed training to build the base, you could still get them to the same end goal once you switch over to training for a max for a powerlifting meet. Same thing. I could use any form of training I want to get a bicep to a certain size. I could do different sorts of strength training, but all that's going to matter as far as the size that it's at now is going to be the most recent training that you used. And all that's going to matter for your performance is the most recent training you used. Meaning, I could take a power lifter and put them on almost bodybuilding style training. Not necessarily a bunch of curls. They could do a bunch of curls. But as long as I built all their total muscle mass up to a certain point, their body won't care where I got the muscle mass from. It won't care. And then you put them on a full peaking power routine to get them ready to squat, bench, and deadlift for a competition for 12 weeks. They won't perform any different than had I got someone else to the same amount of muscle mass using a slightly different style of training if I put them through the same peaking program. All right, your body cares more about the most recent training than it does the stuff that you use to build the foundation. Because again, the further the training gets back in the past, that stuff detrains. All your body knows now is what motor patterns you have established, which will affect strength. It will affect strength at different angles. It will affect how well you deadlift, how well you do a push press, how well you arm wrestle, how well you throw a football. All right, the recent training stimulus is what affects the motor patterns the most. Different motor patterns will detrain. Body doesn't care on the muscle mass. The muscle mass end, it only matters how much muscle you have. And here's what I mean. We could take different forms of training. We know that full body training 3 days a week will generally put more muscle mass more quickly on a natural lifter. They'll go through their new gains quicker. But if I took someone on the body split and I took 18 months to get them to the same point, I took their identical twin to get to 12 months of training. Like if I put the identical twin on a full body training routine, their old bricks way in the past here, and built them up to an exact amount of muscle size, whatever it is, 180 pounds at 14% body fat. And I took their identical twin with the same muscle fiber distribution, same bone structure, and I started training them 6 months or 7 months sooner on a body part style split training 5 days a week with a leg day, a squat day. And it took me 50% longer to get him there. If they both reach the same point, they have similar amounts of muscle mass, and I put both of them on a new program, an identical program together, they will probably progress at the same rate and make the same gains in size and strength and everything else, because their starting point determined where they will take off from, and where they're currently going to be at once I've had them so many months of the same program, they're going to have very identical results. And the previous training that I used to get them there, one might have been more efficient than the other, got them there faster, but if I got them to the same point, that all fades away and only the current training matters. That's one reason linear periodization works so well. You can use it to build bases quicker and bust people through plateaus, and then when you have someone who's ready to compete in a competitive endeavor, it doesn't matter what it is. That's why we can use this same periodization to base build. And then when you have someone who's ready to compete in something, it doesn't matter whether it's football, powerlifting, strongman, hell, bodybuilding, it doesn't matter. You change their new training to match the new goal, and how they built their previous base will fade away and not matter anymore. See, that's the interesting thing with the way the body works. All of your old training sessions detrain anyways, and they start detraining in about 2 weeks after you do it. Meaning, in other words, muscle that you gain from a squat and the motor patterns that you started building from a squat will start fading after 2 weeks. Now, if you don't train at all, everything is going to fade. But if I come over and put someone who's been doing heavy squats for triples onto a leg press and have them do a bunch of sets of 10, they'll probably maintain the muscle mass and gain new muscle mass in their legs because they're getting a new training stimulus, but their squat strength will start to fade, and the motor patterns they learned for the squat will start to fade more and more with every week. But the muscle they built will only stay because I'm adding new bricks. that are building up on top of the old ones while the old ones break away, because you are losing muscle over time also from previous sessions, but you're rebuilding new muscle from new training stimulus to replace what you are losing. And that's an interesting thing to look at, because what that means for a lot of people get caught up in the best way to build a base working towards a later goal, and actually it doesn't matter as much as long as whatever you're trying to hit that certain goal, you switch to the training style that's going to give you those results. A lot of times all we're looking at is how fast are you gaining muscle or how fast are you gaining strength. The type of training will affect that, but once you reach to a certain point, the new training stimulus will take over and will eventually replace the old stuff, because those muscle cells turn over, those muscle cells die, they get replaced, everything gets replaced and built up. Motor patterns shift away and are replaced by new ones. And it's also the problem we run into with certain types of periodization. A lot of people try to run a lot of concurrent training where they try to train all these performance elements at one time, and that's really difficult to do because the body can only make so many adaptations at once. When it has fewer adaptations to adapt to and a very strong training signal for certain things, it will excel at those more. And what you can do is use that to build different base skills and then switch your priorities around when you need to. And that's what works really well for athletes who are multifaceted in nature. People who need different disciplines, like football players, basketball players, they need a lot of different skills. But you can build different bases of things and let those fade in the competitive season, because they won't completely fade before the end of the competitive season, and have them focus on the specific skills they need to compete. And and that's true of any endeavor. Meaning you could take, for example, a bodybuilder and build them up a certain way using a power style training, and then switch them over to more volume to fill out muscles and shift muscle glycogen stores to make them look fuller later. And vice versa, you can take a power lifter and you can build their muscle base using a bunch of high rep training. You can have them build their base using 10 to 12 reps and then switch them over to peak power when you get them closer to ready to compete. And in the end, it won't really matter, because building a base for something is building a base, and a lot of that fades away once you get to where you want to get. The new training will take over the adaptations, and all the old adaptations will eventually fade. And some people say, well, that's horrible, that's bad news. No, that's reality. Nothing in the human body is constant. It's all breaking down, it's all decaying, it's all detraining, and that's why it's important to look at the long term, look at where you're at, where you're going, and understand the journey that you're putting yourself through. But more importantly, it's important to understand that sometimes trying to achieve an end goal, even your end goal, is temporary in the grand scheme of things, because it won't be permanent. But you can shift goals as you go, and you don't have to focus upon a goal from 2 years from now with your current training. You just have to be building a base and understand that you can shift training styles at any time, and the new style will take over. The main thing is that you continue to base build and move forward. As long as you're moving forward, you're going to progress, and you're going to be able to do other things later with the athleticism or strength or muscle mass and stuff that you have built already, because you'll build off of that and push that old training to the side, and it takes over. So hopefully that makes sense, that people understand that better when you describe the model of the wall that you're building up with each training session being a brick. But as it gets taller, the older bricks get compressed further and further down under it. They get crumbled into dust and they fade away. They become no longer part of the wall, and that the wall is always shrinking, so you have to always be adding new bricks. And the bricks at the top are the ones that affect where you are the most right now, where the top of the wall is and what it's doing. Because they're fresh, they haven't broken down, they're having the most impact. And that's a better way to look at it. And there is no final product. There isn't a final product. You're always changing, always adapting, always in flux. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.